Hi, we're in my garage again. Man, I feel like a giant asshole now, letting taking Corey and Jeremy to see Winter's Tale, because it was a little bit my fault. It was a bit of my fault that we saw that instead of Robocop, because I was on the fence of seeing because on Richard to see and the curious side of how bad Winter's Tale was won over, and I feel really bad now, especially for Jeremy because Robocop was. I thought this was actually kind of awesome. Not as incredible, not as like great as the remake as the original, but for a necessary remake, this had a lot of cool stuff in it. Some really good action, some really engaging performances, some interesting like very memorable scenes, and like takes and themes on the ideas brought up in the original. And it's an interesting modernization of like the ideas. And, like it feels like a remake that's not necessary, but it feels like someone like had a good idea of like how to modernize it. By no means the perfect movie. Gosh, no. I've get like basically this movie's like sort of like the movie's called RoboCop, not like even if you took out the original, it's called RoboCop because like the movie's effectively like split into two different halves. One's awesome, one's very sappy and very jumbled together. Guess which of the two is? Okay, I'll start off in like some of the cooler points of this movie. This movie has like a great opening credits gag where like they have the MGM logo, but right as they do with the new zoom out from the eye of the lion. But when you zoom out and the lion's about to roar, it's like me, ma. It cuts to Samuel L. Jackson as the basically this Bill O'Reilly type do a newscast about like U.S. drone warfare and I think it was Tehran. And Samuel Jackson in this movie is just awesome. He's separated from the entire cast, and he's only in like 4 scenes, but like man, he's having the time of his life. I would totally watch a TV series. I would totally watch news every day, and Samuel L. Jackson reported it. I won't get into the whole like confused for Lawrence Fishburne jokes. Though honestly, like apparently there's a lot of people who confused him with Morgan Freeman. That was last week, guys. Gosh. But anyway, they show like drone warfare and Tehran. They have the big ED-209s, which are so basically useless in this movie. In fact, they were even less developed than I thought they were in the original. Because they're shown in the beginning, and you basically never see them again, or they don't do anything until like the climax. And like they might look cooler and they might animate like actual robots now, but they're still basically as ineffective as the stop motion ones. There's no stairs. There is a lot. They do fall a lot, and they're completely useless when that happens. But anyway, and they develop like this movie's much more sci-fi than the original, almost because it has like 10 times the budget of the original. But they have all the ED-209s. All the basically it's all just the robots. And again, they're like because it's Bill O'Reilly and it's Bill O'Reilly Jackson. And it's obvious it's a spoof on Fox News. You know that because almost every scene with Samuel Jackson when he's like beginning or exiting scene, he has a digital American flag waving behind him. It's hysterical. And basically they have the news report saying, "Oh, drone warfare is great. Like all these people are pacified and they're living in a safe, secure environment." Even though, like, you see from the perspective of the visors of the drones that they're all basically terrified for their lives, and they all have to like they can't like sort of like exist without basically ignoring them. And then all of a sudden, these suicide bombers come out of nowhere just for the purpose of dying on TV, just to prove a point. Is like you can't pacify us, and they blow up, and then and then Bill O'Reilly just like cuts that part out. It's like, nope, they're safe. No, also the best part of this movie, but with Samuel Jackson, every time like he's about to like exit a scene, they play the Robocop theme. I thought that was a great touch. It's like, who can save America? It's like, na 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 na. And plus, I think he's like the only person. He's the first person in the movie to coin the term RoboCop. So like, of course he'd be cool. But anyway, back to like, oh yeah, that's like one of the that's like a sort of an idea of like that's sort of like a microcosm of what's good and bad about this remake in terms of like not bad, but like it has a lot of problems. But like the Novak element is basically, again, it's like the Bill O'Reilly Fox News type spoof, and that replaces all the fake commercials and news reports that were in the original movie. And this one, like, I think it's a good substitute, and it works basically only because Samuel Jackson is such a charismatic performer that like you almost believe him, and then you almost believe him like his like belief about drones being like a pretty one-sided benefit, and then when he cuts out all like real details, then you know he's a bad guy, or just you know it's Fox News. And plus, like, after, like, that first scene in the intro, he does not come back for an hour in this movie. And, again, basically, you could sum up, like, all the awesome stuff, most of the awesome stuff in the first hour, and then, like, all the jumbled together, undeveloped stuff in the back half. But I'll get back to that later. But if I'm gonna talk about the structure, then I want to talk about some of the differences, because there's a lot of interesting takes on like there are no like direct transfers where they are, but like they mess with them enough that changes the dynamic a little bit. It's like, for one, Nancy Ellen Lewis, they raised and gender swapped her with Michael K. Williams, who was awesome and is significantly less annoying than Irish in Battlefield 4. Though he doesn't get much to do. On a side note, Irish was so annoying in that game. He kept getting into trouble. Anyway, and then what else? Alex Murphy is like, he's an established he's like an established cop. He's no like innocent transferee. He's more of this renegade. Like, he'll go the extra mile to like solve a case or whatever. Whereas in the first movie, he was like, he was just doing his job. It was just so, like, he wouldn't go, like, he didn't, like, go the extra mile, but like, he reported to his duty. So I think that made him a little bit more tragic. Because honestly, the reason why he got car bombed in the first place, because, like, he was interfering, like, obviously, without, like, the support of his partner, or, like, other, like, good cops, his backup. So it's entirely his fault, kind of. Now, like, he got car bombed. But anyway, I want to rush to like the actual robo part of RoboCop, because that's where all the good stuff is. It's like Gary Oldman in this movie. Like, I'm surprised. I was like, from the trailers, I thought he'd be a much more like of a lesser character, but no, he's in a lot of this movie, and he's giving a really good performance for what it's an an unnecessary remake of an '80s action movie. He's giving a really good performance. He plays this Dr. Norn, who specializes in synthetic limb replacements for amputees. Now, like, when you first see him, he's helping this amputee, this veteran who lost his arms, but like they replace him with like whole like synthetic limbs, and they're trying to have him like readjust to playing like the guitar, and it's a really cool visual to look at, and like it's an interesting like application of it. And it shows a lot about his character. He's a character that's very much for the patients, for his patients, and it's a neat way of getting information across to the audience. It's like, when he's playing, he plays really well, but then when he gets too emotional, he starts flubbing up the lines, flubbing up all the chords, and he's like, no, like when you're too emotional, your body changes, your brain changes your body chemistry, and therefore like the limbs won't like function properly. And there's an interesting like take on like that whole like balance between human and machines, like how the emotional element, which will like be a thorough line. Then Michael Keane comes in as Raymond Sellers, who again is the CEO of Omnicorp, who she was trying to get drones onto the U.S. soil, onto U.S. soil, but he's being blocked by the Dreyfus Act, which prevents any robots or drones from being from taking over law enforcement or whatever. And of course this entire company is bad guys because like they're obviously like saying like they're finding loopholes, but they can't find loopholes, so they're just like playing around with logic or like American people. Honestly, there's a lot of terminology that makes them basically EA. It's like focus group. Like they keep talking about focus groups. It's like people do not know what they really want, so you just show them. And it's like with Robocop. It's like I don't care if he's like this is the way he's supposed to function. I want him to get out there now. He does a lot of your stuff with his hands. It's like, please, I tell you, just get it down. It's like I don't. Michael Keaton's has a weird performance in this movie because I don't know if like he's supposed to be like greedy or he's just like kooky. But goddamn, he's probably having a really good time and he's having a lot of fun. But I don't know, I guess. But again, Alex Murphy, giant car bomb, 4th degree burns and amputees and coma everywhere. So like they turn him into Robocop. And it's all the robots, the adaptation to the suit minus the black color scheme, which honestly, it looks again like it's like a catch-22 in that like catch-22 in the movie, because in the movie it's established why like there's a justified reason why it's now a black suit instead of like the normal chrome to black. Because it does look more tactical, but though it kind of looks more boring. Looks more generic and more like hip and cool and sleek. Because that's Jay Baruchel's entire character. He plays the giant PR like douchebag who's just like saying like focus groups, numbers, demographics, poll numbers, what the American people want. Oh my god, they say a lot about American people or politics. It's really this movie doesn't really take a stance on whether or not drones are good and bad. So like approaching that for that kind of ambiguity in this like kind of action movie, I'll give it credit. What else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, anyway, like he does look more tactical, but they show the old suit like for at least a decent enough amount of time that still kind of pissed me off. And at the end of the movie, they reset back to the old suit. So like, what could you do there? That's cool. But like, well, okay, that was a nice touch of them. Like at the end, like giving him back the old classic suit. That's appreciated touch. It's like they gave up. But in terms of the Robocop stuff, this movie plays much more like a Frankenstein story because it's basically the first movie, like in terms of like the character development from the first movie in reverse. Instead of a machine discovering the humanity in his software or his brain, it's basically a man struggling with the fact that he's not entirely himself anymore. He's part machine. And there's a lot of interesting stuff on that. It's like the Frankenstein syndrome. It's basically the Frankenstein like symptom if Frankenstein knew he was not entirely like himself. And like Joe Kinnaman, though honestly I don't think as a completely human being, his performance is that great. Peter Weller was a much more charismatic actor, and Joe Kinnaman's allowed to show a more wider range of emotion. Though it's all like distress or sort of self-seriousness, whereas in Peter Weller it was more like it was more charismatic and tongue in cheek, and it was like when the tragic stuff happened, it was much more subtle. But anyway, okay, I want to talk about this hysterically like inaccurate image because of what happened to Robocop, because that's like one of the scenes a lot of people are talking about is like when Alex wants to see like what about parts of him as he become as a human, and they show you clearly in like after the explosion that like like okay he lost his left arm and his right leg, no, his left leg, and he may be blind in one eye and completely deaf, and like his all of his body's charred, but like it's salvageable-ish and to a degree. And then when you see him like take all the Robocop stuff off, what have I left? And they take off his legs and then his arms, like, okay, and then his entire chest, it's like, the fuck? And then they show you what's left of him. He is literally just a head with like a third of a spinal cord, and then just like 2 lungs and a heart. And then another difference in the movies are like he keeps like his right arm, but it's not his right arm. It's just his hand. And like even though they saved his right arm and like it was salvageable, they just keep the right hand, and like the rest of the arm is like attached to this weird like steel pole, and it's all like self-contained. It's like, that is not possible. You cannot survive even your condition solely on your lungs, a heart, and like one hand that's not even connected to an arm. You need like a kidneys at least. How did no one take this seriously? Because I saw a lot of like gasps in the audience saying like, that is not a realistic image. Everything else in that whole first hour is really cool. In that image, it is a little creepy, though it's entirely implausible. I had this whole discussion with my dad about how you can't survive on that. It's that's like even source code started this whole thing about like how much you can remove from a human body, then to the point where like they shouldn't really be alive. Not the moral reasons, just because like the physical like biological pretenses of like, how do you not live without this and this. But anyway, that was a nice that was like a scene of like pretty intense, like it's a pretty intense scene from like Joel Kinnaman and Gary Oldman. Like there was a nice balance between like him saying like, I should die, I'm practically not human, I don't have anything to live with, and then like Gary Oldman saying like, as a doctor my job is to keep you alive, and plus your family signed off onto the Robocop program with the hopes that you are still alive. And he's like, okay, and he starts crying, and that was a really intense scene. It's ruined by like this like the hysterical image of like what he's left with. And then then they proceeded with another like half hour 40 minutes of like him becoming sort of like. Now the structural thing in this movie for the first hour is half of it's basically like them testing out how this new Robocop is to like compared to like the rest to the ED-208s, the robots. And Jackie Earl Haley's in this movie. Actually, he's in this movie thankfully more than I thought he would, because Jackie Earl Haley is awesome, and this is like the most screen time I've seen him in a while since Rorschach. And this guy's having a blast. He's not being like a creep like Freddy Krueger, but like he's this armed robot specialist. So like, and he has a problem with like saying like, you're putting an organic essentially into our program or our strategies. It's gonna like slow everything down. And he's very biased against Alex Murphy. And they have all these scenes. They have these cool like scenes where like they're testing the science behind it. And all of the science stuff here is really cool. Again, how like when they have him in hibernation, they're simulating the dreams for him, or how they show how he survives, like how they transfer out like all the waste products, and they transfer back in new blood or proteins or in carbs or whatever. And I thought that was, there's a lot of cool sci-fi stuff in this movie. Like, what was it? I won't get to that. I haven't in that, but again, there's so many, lot of cool visuals and like how they go through the development process. It's kind of like it's very meticulous to the point where it's kind of boring because it's honestly a giant plot cul-de-sac. But I like I thought all of the world building and development stuff around RoboCop is really cool. It's like when they first show him off, in the old suit, they have him in a robot, like, simulate a test scenario, and Jackie Earl Haley's like, I like to play music, and they play the Tin Man song from Wizard of Oz. It's like, towel. It's really cool. They have the side-by-side visual between what the robot's processing and what Alex is processing. And it's a really cool look between, like, what makes us human. Like, it's like a nice visual because, like, a robot basically, like, assesses the threat and just immediately takes an action. Whereas, with Alex, like, his brain, his software assesses the threat, but then he has to it's him acting as a regular cop for a little bit, and then all that threat assessment stuff processes through, and then he acts like a robot cop. And there's a lot of cool scenes about that. And then they have Gary Oldman betray his morals confusingly with altering his brain so that way he thinks he's doing things and it's actually just a computer. And okay, that kind of brings me to one of the big problems with Gary Oldman's character. Like he is giving a really good performance, and like there is a lot of like good subtext between like what it means to be a doctor, or like between struggling with his moralities, or like saving the life of his patients versus like research that would promote that research. I mean like funding that would promote that research. But his character development is like ruined by so much by very like unpaced editing. Because he's like there's a lot of scenes where he's like, I don't want to do this. He's a man inside a machine. I am not altering his brain. Edit. He's altering his brain. It tastes like peanut butter, and he's stabbing things and putting things into his brain. Like that was a lot. That's very kind of groan-worthy. But anyway. Again, all the cool stuff. There's a lot of cool visuals and themes and acting in the first hour, and they have like this fun, like a lot of these fun scenes where they're dealing with how to market RoboCop. It's like them choosing between which the other amputees to go with, or like there's this great gag where he's talking about It's about the look of RoboCop and how they got to him looking more tactical, because they have the old suit. Like Jerry Barrow shows, like we took the old suit to this penitentiary in combat mode, and like everyone's scared of him, but then he transforms and has glowing lights, like a police car. It's like it's social mode. The kids love him. It's like, yeah, and the Pirate Keen's like, no, it looks stupid. But anyway. Then you get to the actual the cop part of this movie, and that's a big problem in this movie, because after like the first hour when he comes back home, this movie jams basically 3/4 of the old RoboCop into like the next like half hour, like 45 minutes, and that's like it's very rushly paced and underdeveloped, and it only comes off as engaging because like what's been established before, and like performances wise. And there are a lot of problems with the movie. Okay, because like his family is now his family was like a very like a brief part of the first movie. Here they're major, like a major driving plot of the plot motivator. And they're all their scenes are sappy as shit. It's really sappy because like okay, Abby Corner, she does nothing but cry like in some kind of distress in this movie, and his son's like. So it's like, I like sports, Daddy. I saved all the Red Ring games for you. When can we watch them? Because I was waiting for you. Aww. Like everything that is set, like all their scenes are sappy as shit. But anyway, and then also like they have like a Clance Boddicker type as like Valen. He's basically gone, like, after the car bomb, he's gone for, like, for, like, a whole hour of that movie. So, like, he's basically, he has basically no significance. Two, he's not engaging of a character. At least Curtis Smith as Boddicker, like he wasn't on screen enough where you could like thoroughly see why he's like a criminal like leader, and he's like thoroughly disgusting. And then also like no one's surprised though, like there's no funny scene where no one's surprised like he's alive, because it was funny in the first movie when like that one guy at the gas station goes like, "We killed you, you're dead," and then they keep repeating that, and I love that line. I keep thinking like, I got better. Robocop says, "I got better." Oh, that reminds me, I could listen to Jackie Earle Haley talk about guns all day. He looks like he's having a good time. Because, that brings you back to, like, some of the humor elements in this movie. There's actually a fair decent amount of humor. It's not like the hammer in your head, it's not the same kind of humor the first one had, or the original one had, where it's, like, sort of hammering it in. It's more sarcastic and spry. It's like Samuel Jackson, obviously, like, he cuts off people because he's Samuel Jackson and Bill O'Reilly, so it's okay. And then you have Jackie Earle Haley being like sassy with Robocop, with Alex, and he's like, okay, it's like again, he's playing the Tin Man music from Wizard of Oz, and then when they get the final results, and Alex is like way behind, he's like, "I wouldn't buy that for $1." And then he's like, when they have like the big final set piece with him, which is a really cool action scene when they display like the new Robocop suit and like how all the cool like processing stuff in him. He's like, "Okay, let's start on 3. 3." I thought that was and they have like cool music and everything. Honestly, like the cool stuff, like the modernization with Robocop becomes like, I noticed like of the first movie, like he basically he literally moved and acted like a giant tank. In this one, they made him more vulnerable and more agile, but like vulnerable in that like he's like just having wearing a lot of heavy armor. But it makes for a lot of cool like fast action and choreography, and the action here is pretty good. It's a little shaky cammy, but most of the for the better part of it, it's pretty like watchable, and like it's pretty cool. It's cool to see because it's robots. But again, back to the whole thing. It crams the whole like, robot. We take away his emotions, so he's a robot cop, and then like he instantly fights crime, and then instantly solves his own murder after like he solves his own murder, which was like at least like a half hour in the first movie, in like 5 minutes. He's like, because like what they did was why he becomes a robot is like right before they reveal him off, they were like, okay, let's put in all the data, like all like the millions of terabytes of data into your brain, like right now, right before we're supposed to display you, and then like overnight or whatever. And then like he goes through a seizure because like he's now watching footage of his own murder. Like, oh, and they're like, what do we do? He can't support this. He can't support any of his systems, and his emotions are too distressed. And it's like, lower his dopamine. And like, and then Gary Oldman is being harassed, like, your reputation is on the line. And then like his idea is like just lower his dopamine level, so he has basically no emotion. Ocean is like, I feel fine. You're under arrest. You have 2 seconds to comply. I don't know if like that was intentional or not. That was a little weird. You cannot like process it like an answer in 2 seconds without like getting and then it's like, I will take over this case. In this case, have a nice day, officers. Thank you for your cooperation. Honestly, there's not that else like out of lines from the original movie. There's only like 3 or 4. I don't think they even say like, "Your move, creep." You don't know, it's a poster. But anyway, back to the original. Back to the story. But again, honestly, it's basically the last hour. It's basically the original RoboCop rush through. So it's a weird juxtaposition, because the first one is basically entirely new stuff, an entirely different take on the RoboCop concept, and then when you get back to Detroit, it's old RoboCop, just rushed and underdeveloped. But there's and like you see glimpses of like the the themes and developments that were going on in the first movie that keeps it enough from being a different movie. Yeah, and there's like, and it's just sort of jumbled together. Like again, like a lot of the plot stuff makes no sense.